Hey y'all, it's your girl Missniecytv, and I'm here to do a review for Sistas Season 10, Episode 9. The episode starts up, and we see Fatima sitting in the guy's house that supposedly blew up Andy's car. And he comes out of his room, and he's startled, and he's like, what are you doing in my house, and who are you? Fatima's like, Luther, right? She's like, I'm Fatima, and I want to know who hired you to blow up the rose. And we see some girl come out of Luther's room, and we find out that her name is Erica, and her and Luther have been getting out of business, and he been paying for it. Erica's like, is everything okay? And Fatima's like, you see me sitting here, don't you? It's not okay, and I think you should leave. Luther's like, you don't have to go anywhere, go back in the room. So we see Erica go back in the room. Fatima and Luther continue their conversation, and he's basically like, some doctor hired me to do the job. And Fatima's like, can you tell me which doctor that it was? And Luther's like, I can't tell you that. But Fatima's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, how much he paid you to do the job. And do you realize that me and my friends could all been hurt since that explosion was so close to my house? Luther turns around and says $4,000. And I'm like, Luther, you really that bad off for money that you took a job for $4,000? Dr. Cruz, you really that cheap and desperate to hurt Andy that you was willing to pay somebody $4,000 to do the job? You really need help. After Fatima asked how much it was, that's when the Rock Boys bust in, right? And Fatima's like, how much did he pay you again? $4,000. And Fatima passes off a lot more than $4,000 to one of the Rock Boys. Fatima says, y'all enjoy that, and one of the Rock Boys is like, trust me, we will. And then Fatima leaves, and I'm like, Fatima, you shouldn't be doing these things while you're pregnant. I'm glad that you didn't get in on the action. But did y'all see how Luther tried to get buck with Fatima? And I'm like, this is why you don't need to be putting yourself in situations like this. Fatima, it's time for you to worry about yourself and the family that you're creating and not everybody else's. Over at the restaurant, we see Hayden and Cheyenne on their date, right? Hayden's like, I'm surprised you changed your mind. And Cheyenne's like, I didn't. I just didn't want to seem easy at first. Hayden's like, okay. But Hayden's like, you came to the office earlier and said that you were coming to see your sister. Who's your sister? Cheyenne looks over across the restaurant because she sees Andy and Dr. Vaughn there. I was hoping that Hayden would catch on and realize that Cheyenne kept looking over there, so that might be your sister, but he didn't. So, over at Andy and Dr. Vaughn's table, Dr. Vaughn is basically asking, what's got you so distracted? I'm over here talking to you, and you're not paying attention. Because she's over there looking at Cheyenne and Hayden on their date. Andy's like, I'm sorry, I promised to give you my undivided attention now. So, Cheyenne and Hayden's date is over, and they walk over to Andy and Dr. Vaughn's table. And of course, Hayden says something smart, like, I'm surprised to see you here. And of course, you'd be with Dr. Vaughn. Dr. Vaughn is like, do I know you? Hayden's like, no, but I know of you. Hayden's like, I think you should know that every guy that Andy ends up with either ends up stabbed, shot, or in jail. And I don't think you want to do that. And Dr. Vaughn is like, well, this is my date, and I really want to get to know her, and I really don't care about the rest of that. Andy's like, I don't think you've been formally introduced to your date. This is Cheyenne Barnes. And Hayden's like, Barnes, like, y'all two are sisters. Andy's like, yeah, you don't see the resemblance. And Hayden's just big mad that Andy and Cheyenne are sisters. And he's like, why would you let me go out with this underage girl? Are you trying to set me up or something? Andy's like, I don't care about you that much to put that much time and energy. Dr. Vaughn and Hayden have this simple back and forth. And I thought that Dr. Vaughn was really going to give Hayden the business and beat him up. But Andy told him to chill out. Hayden and Cheyenne eventually leave, but before they leave, Andy tells Cheyenne not to bring Hayden back to her house because Hayden's bad news. And Cheyenne is like, I wasn't even planning on it. Over at the gym, we see Zach working out, and of course Madison's there because she owns the gym now. So Madison comes over and she introduces herself to Zach. They exchange names, and Madison's like, I recognize your name. Are you the one that tried to buy out the gym? And Zach is like, yeah. Madison's like, well, I hope there's no bad feelings about it. Zach is like, no. Madison tries to bring up Fatima, but she can't remember her name. And Zach is like, Fatima? Madison's like, yeah. Zach is basically like, that's my girl. And Madison's like, do you happen to know Rich? Zach is like, yeah, that's my peoples. And then Madison's like, well, he mentioned you and talked about Fatima, and he said that the both of y'all are nice. First, I would like to say I'm so glad that this is the first lady that's not lusting after Zach, because Madison has her attention on Rich, and I'm so glad about it. 2, I think this will be Madison's introduction to the other lady. I wonder how they're going to feel about Madison down the line, and especially since she's been introduced by Fatima, once they found out that she's eventually going to start talking to Rich. Over at Billy Jake's, we see Maurice and Danny at the bar, and they're talking to Chris, the one that used to work at the gay bar. Rich basically tells them that he got a second job, and then Danny and Maurice start talking about Dylan and how Dylan's doing, and Maurice is like, my little powder donut's doing okay, he treats me so good and he's such a good man. This is when Maurice gets a call from Pam because she can't turn off the alarm system at the salon. I'm like, how can you work at the salon and you don't know the passcode? That makes no sense. And Maurice and them chose the easiest passcode in the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could have at least made it something more difficult, something that nobody could figure out. Like, some time passes and Danny gets a call from Tony, and he's basically like just concerned about her safety and telling her that he'll meet her at the house and he'll just stay outside because Danny's like, you got a key? Tony's like, no, I'm gonna just stay outside because I just want to make sure you're safe and that that creep doesn't come back. Danny and him have a little bit of a back and forth because he realizes that Danny's drunk. So eventually Danny hangs up the phone and Maurice is like, why is Tony so concerned about your safety? Maurice taps his neck, making it be known that he notices Danny's bruises. So Danny tries to play with her hair and try to play it off. Maurice is like, who is this creep that Tony is speaking of? Danny's like, oh, I was stalked by this guy at the grocery store and we got into a little bit of a scuffle. Maurice is like, are you okay? Danny's like, yeah, I'm alright, but then she has a flashback. If I had $1 for every time that there was a flashback in this season, I'd be rich. Speaking of Officer Green, though, we see Officer Green over at Danny's house, and he's banging on her door, and she's not answering. So a neighbor comes outside, and he basically tells her, what are you looking at? Go back in the house. So as he's getting ready to leave, he calls Danny, and over at the bar again, Danny just looks at the call, and she gets up to leave and get ready to go home. And Maurice is like, you sure you're okay? He's like, Danny, wait, you're my ride. Over at Zach and Fatima's, we see Zach and Fatima having a conversation, and Zach asks Fatima how did everything go back at the office with Andy. Fatima's basically like, what? And she's looking at him like, what are you talking about? Fatima, you gotta keep up with the lie. So she tries to keep up with the lie by saying it's pregnancy, and everything went well. What I think is gonna happen is something's gonna happen to Luther, and it's gonna get back to the police that the person that blew up Andy's car is no longer around or severely injured. Then it's gonna come back on Fatima that she was the last one at Luther's house, and then Zach is gonna find out that she lied, and it's gonna be this whole big thing. Then Zach mentions Madison and everything with the chairman. He gives Fatima her card, and Fatima trusts nobody, so she's like, I'm gonna go look her up. Then they start talking about Mr. Keys, and how Mr. Keys is doing it. Zach has heard from Mr. Keys, and Zach is like, no, I haven't heard from him in a while. Fatima's like, I think you should call him, and Zach is like, why? Zach comes to realize that Fatima wants him to talk to Mr. Keys about his father, and Zach tries to deviate from the conversation because he doesn't want to talk about his father, and Fatima tries to talk to him, and I'm thinking that Fatima was trying to tell him what she heard that day, but Zach didn't want to talk about the conversation. At Andy's penthouse, we see Dr. Vaughn talking to Andy after their date. Dr. Vaughn tries to kiss her, but then he realizes that they're supposed to be taking it slow, so he kisses her hand. But then they do talk about Cheyenne, and he's like, that's your sister, she's nothing but trouble. And I don't know why. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, does Dr. Vaughn know Cheyenne? Once Dr. Vaughn leaves, Cheyenne comes from around the corner in some type of like lingerie, nighty type thing. And Andy's just looking at her. And they talk to each other about the dates, and Cheyenne is like, he didn't really hate you. Andy's like, the feeling's mutual. Andy's basically like, I told you not to go out with him, but you didn't listen to me. And as they're talking, Andy gets another ding at the elevator, and she thinks that it's Dr. Vaughn, but it's not. It turns out to be Agent Watt. Andy's like, what are you doing here? We weren't supposed to meet until tomorrow morning. And Agent Watt is like, that can't wait. And of course, Cheyenne is still trying to flirt with Agent Watt, but Andy tells her to go in the other room so that her and Agent Watt can talk. Agent Watt basically tells Andy that there's a hit out for her and that she needs to go into witness protection. And Andy's like, I'm not uprooting my life. Andy is like, y'all know that the hit is coming from Dr. Cruz, so why don't y'all just arrest him? Agent Watt is like, that's where things get great, and that makes me think that the hit is not from Dr. Cruz, and it could be from somebody else in Andy's life, like Gary, Penelope, Hudson. Andy asks, well, is anybody else affected by this? And Agent Watt is like, no. Agent Watt leaves, and Cheyenne is still listening from behind the door, and the way that Cheyenne is looking, it looks like she either has something to do with it or she's really scared. So Andy calls Fatima to let her know everything that's happening. Fatima does tell her that her and Zach aren't affected, and Zach is like, thank God. I'm like, Zach, that was rude, but I get it. So once Fatima and Zach get off the phone with Andy, Zach basically tells Fatima that they have to move more carefully, and Fatima's like, no, we're not living in fear, and I'm not maneuvering my life for anybody else. Back over at Andy's, we see Danny come over, and they basically sit down and they have a conversation, and Danny notices Cheyenne, and she's like, you grew up so fast, and then they have a good time and everything else. And then Danny brings up the fact that she went to go visit Sabrina and there was a social worker there. Danny brought up the whole power of attorney thing, and Danny was like, to be honest, I wasn't even listening with everything that got going on. And Andy kept persistently asking her, was she okay? And Danny's like, yeah, I'm okay. We all know that Danny's not okay. Cheyenne does mention that she's looking for a job, like a salon job. And Danny's like, well, you're in luck because I'm partially the owner of Karen's restaurant now. So you won't get the job just by me giving it to you. You'll have to talk to HR, and I'm HR. After some time and they continue to talk, Danny eventually leaves. And once Danny gets home, she sees Tony outside the door kind of sleeping. Tony, you're a little too late. You already missed Officer Green. But I'm glad that Tony didn't see Officer Green there because it would have been another altercation and Tony might have ended up in jail. Outside of Danny's apartment, we see Officer Green just sitting in the car and he's just staring and stalking Danny. And I'm like, this is not going to end well. Somebody's either going to be severely hurt or somebody's not going to be around to tell their story anymore. Let me know what you guys think about this episode. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, turn on your bell notifications. Bye!